Fisayo. He has refused to go to see the barber. Are you afraid of COVID?
Fisayo, how are you?
Your mic is muted, Fisayo.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes, I greet you, sir and ma.
Hello.
Greet you.
Hi.
Journalist whose shoelaces I can't even touch.
It's the man who's winning all the awards globally. The ones that me and Simon have never smelled.
I can't touch.
The man has been to prison.
But I forgot to bring a biro and a pen in case I need to write. So that's what I was doing.
Okay, can I give you mine?
But I've already found one. Thank you. I know it's easy to stretch and just collect, but it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to our panelists as well. We are so glad we can be having this conversation. My name is Dapo. I work with Enough is Enough Nigeria. And this is Thursday Talks. We do this every month. We started in 2018. It's a platform to just get active citizens and people that are concerned about good governance, really just talk about how we can change things and what we can do as citizens to move the needle. And of course, with COVID-19 in April, we had to switch to online conversations, and it's been good so far. And so today's episode is to really discuss journalists and social change. We want to know what the role of journalists are in driving social change and what citizens can do as well. So I know that as conversations evolve, we will dig deep into what citizens can do and not just career journalists in that sense. So we're so glad to be having this conversation. To Simon Kolaoli, thank you so much, sir. We are glad to have you here. To Madam Kadari Ahmed, thank you so much, ma. And then to Fisayo Soyombo, we are grateful to have you moderate this conversation. Thank you so much. So I would hand over to Fisayo, who is the moderator, so we can start this. Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone that has joined so far. Please know that you can ask your questions. We don't have any areas we do not want to touch, so ask your questions. You can use the Q&A session or just chat us up and let us know. Yeah, so we would start right away. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to the 16 participants we have right now. These are the true, these are our true friends. We know more Nigerians more people will join us with time. I'll start by saying it's a huge honor for me to be the one moderating this event for so many reasons, but we would come back to at least one of those reasons later. Let me introduce our guests. They have at least 3 things in common that I know. Both of them are former editors. They are both Chevening scholars, and they are both media entrepreneurs. Ms. Kadaria Ahmed is the CEO of Daria Media. Mr. Simon Kolawole is the CEO of the cable newspaper. Ms. Ahmed was editor of Next newspaper. I hope that there are people here who witnessed the story of Next newspaper. It ran for just 3 years, 2008, 2011, but it was explosive. It was top-notch journalism. You couldn't ask for anything better. She was the editor, and of course, Mr. Simon Kolawole is the CEO of he was editor of This Day newspaper for so many years. Let me also add that Mr. Kolawole, until 3 years ago, was my employer. So it's an honor for me to I mean, then there was in 2014 there was a panel that interviewed me for the job. So it's a huge honor for me to unfortunately this
Simon, this is payback.
Unfortunately, this is not a job interview. But then imagine if you had been very wicked to me in the 3 years of working for him.
You deal with me today.
What I would have done is to give Ms. Ahmed 10 minutes to talk, and I'll give Mr. Kola only 1 minute to talk. But it was a very good boss. Taught me a lot about editing. My 3 years with the cable were absolutely some of the best in my entire life. So I'm quite honored to have the opportunity to do this. In my tweet publicizing this event in the morning, I wasn't sure whether to say media heavyweights or accomplished journalists. I wasn't sure which one, but I know that journalists are generally proud of just being known as reporters. So I went for accomplished journalists. 2 accomplished journalists who will be discussing with us this evening, and I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful time. I've come here to learn, just to ask questions. And like former governor of Ekiti State, Ayo Fayose, once I ask my questions, I'll just be like this, like a bat. Like a bat. I'll just be like this and watch them talk. Thank you once again to those who have joined us. We are discussing journalists and social change. I want to start by asking, whatever question I ask, both of them will answer, but I'm going to start with Ms. Ahmed. What exactly is the business of journalists with social change? The media is a business. Why can't journalists just do their job, make whatever money they want to make, and just move on? Why should they be bothered by social change in the first place?
Well, actually, you can't do journalism unless at the center of what you do is social change. Otherwise, what you're doing is not journalism. So just to be absolutely clear, the job of journalists predominantly is to hold people in positions of authority accountable. It is a constitutionally recognized responsibility. And so the notion that you can do journalism without looking at what is going on around you is a bit of a misnomer, is a mismatch. Maybe you can do PR, public relations, and make your money. But at the core of journalism is the need to essentially hold a mirror to society, to say, this is who you are, these are the things that are going on, and ask those responsible to do the right by the community. That is our job. Now, of course, things have changed. The world has shifted, and journalism is not that easy anymore, in the sense that sustainability is critical. For you to hold people accountable, you must be alive. And I, haven't come from an organization that did its journalism very well, but doesn't survive, doesn't exist today. I'm acutely aware of the need for sustainability and why money increasingly continues to matter in journalism. So the challenge facing people who want to practice journalism today is finding that balance between being able to hold people in positions of authority accountable, being able to be the voice for the voiceless, being able to do your job as a journalist while ensuring that you can continue to pay salaries, survive, and do all the things that are significant if you are to keep doing what you do and do it well. And as entrepreneurs, I'm sure Simon will share his own experience, and to a certain extent, you are on your own now freelancing as well. So you kind of understand, particularly in a society like Nigeria, it's a very difficult thing to do. And different people have found different models that have enabled them to do this. It means we don't live in luxury. We were not able to, in other places, people who work in media are big people. They can afford the best holidays, they can drive the big cars, because they're little mini superstars. In Nigeria, it's slightly different, because everything you earn, you tend to plow back into the business so that you can keep sustaining the business and not be held, how will I put it, not have anyone question what you do. That independence, financial independence, is important, but it's difficult, and I don't want to talk too much, so maybe I'll just leave it here and allow Simon to perhaps share his experiences as well.
Yeah. Do I have the floor?
Yes,
Yes,
please. Yes,
please.
please.
Okay. Yeah. Like my sister Kadri has said, what is journalism if you are not making any impact on the society? Whatever we do, whatever we report, whatever we write, whatever coverage, whatever bias we try to pursue as journalists, we are here to make a difference. We are not just factory hands, just moving goods along the way, products along the way. Now, we live, especially in a society where we can see so much inequality. We can see a lot of issues around accountability. We can see a lot of people being excluded from the day-to-day life of the society. As a journalist, you cannot claim to be making impact if you do not draw attention to these things, if you do not set agenda for how these issues can be addressed. We live in a society where we all agree corruption is a major problem. A lot of people have said a lot of things about Nigeria. We have raised a lot of issues, but I think we seem to agree that we do not have, it's not a very accountable system that we run. So if you're practicing journalism in such a system and you say, no, all you just want to be doing is reporting press releases, just say, he said. So government makes claims, all you just want to do is to report, oh, we have fed 300 million Nigerians. You're not even asking yourself, are there up to 300 million Nigerians? Then what is our job as journalists? And not just as journalists do we do this thing, we offer platform for people who are also interested in societal change, in solutions, in inspiring change in the society. We give them the platform, in form of interviews, in form of opinion articles, and all that. So we are not just promoting social change, we are agents of social change, but we also facilitate the process of social change.
And Visayo, if I could add quickly, because something Simon said triggered a thought in my head. In fact, I would argue that the more depraved, the more dysfunctional a society is, the greater the need for proper journalism. So ironically, we are going through a period where it is really hard to do proper journalism, to do sustainable journalism, but this is happening at a time when actually the country and the world needs journalism. It's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, I mean, just taking it from there, when Next came, I was editor of This Day. I was very happy with the brand of journalism that Next brought. Now, I grew up reading newspapers, Sunday Times, Sunday Guardian, that focused a lot on investigative reporting, especially, the weekly papers. And somehow, along the line, the journalism changed in Nigeria. So when Next came and they were doing a lot of investigations, I was really, really happy that, okay, this is another brand that has been forsaken or neglected or relegated, and they are bringing it up now. But I had my doubts about the sustainability, not because it was not a good paper. It was a fantastic paper. I bought it. I was a regular reader, I was a regular buyer. But the Nigeria of the 60s, 70s, and 80s is not the same Nigeria we had in the 90s. It's not the same Nigeria we have today. Papers like Daily Times, they were printing up to 500,000 copies, 600,000 copies on Sundays. So they relied on the readers to sustain them economically. And the readers were getting value. Now, over the years, circulation dropped. People were no longer reading newspapers. It kept going down. The readership kept going down. Sales kept going down. So more and more, we were now relying on advertising. Now, the guys who control the economy, the guys who call the shots, they do not want certain things reported. They do not want certain stories written. So if you write a story that they do not like, they are not likely to bring to patronize you in terms of advertising support. Now, if they bring an advert to you, they're expecting you not to write the stories they don't like. So either way, you are in trouble. So I felt that the journalism.
I tell you some stories, man, Simon.
So that is so it's I don't know whether we can call that catch-22. Whichever way you are damned, you publish, you are damned. You don't publish, you are damned. If you had a situation where the majority of the people were economically buoyant, when the Nigerian population was less than 80 million, 70 million, we were printing 500,000 copies of just one paper. 600,000 copies. Now we are 200 million, according to the stats we keep seeing. And how many newspapers? As all Nigerian newspapers put together, how many copies do they print? So how do they survive economically? They now have to depend on the same advertising, the same people that will need to report how they are hurting the economy, how they are dissipating our resources, how they are not doing the basic things that are required for the society to make progress. So that is the dilemma we have found ourselves.
Okay. I have a question, but before then, I want to continue that line of conversation. So what I learned from what you both said is the people themselves then have a role to play. You know, societal change should not just be the burden of the journalist. So let me start from Mr. Kolawole. What do we need to do to get back to the era you talked about, the era of the media relying on public support to thrive rather than on advertisement? Is there a chance we can get back to that era, and what do we need to do to get there?
Yeah, well, the world has changed now. The reality globally is that people are not buying newspapers the way they used. Circulation is dropping. It's a global reality. Only very few countries are still talking about are still experiencing high sales of newspaper, maybe Japan and a few other countries. Everywhere it is dropping. So, but we now have online journalism. We have people who are bloggers, professional entrepreneurs who are professional bloggers, who are journalists too. Of course, TV is there, radio is there. So how can the people be part of this? How can the people support this? Again, it's a mutually reinforcing thing. If the economy is not good, how do you expect the ordinary people to support you? That is a problem. Now, when I was just talking about how newspapers were selling in the 60s and 70s, of course, the economy was better then. People had good income, and people could dispense with part of their income to buy newspapers. But over the years, things have changed. Now, for me, I publish the cable. We have advertisers, they have interests. The standard I have set is anybody advertising here, please know that there's a difference between adverts and the editorial content of the newspaper, of the online newspaper. Therefore, do not say because you're advertising with us, we cannot run certain stories. We try to make it very plain. In fact, there was a company that said we ran something, and the way they called me, the way they were talking, I felt a bit insulted, and I told them, please, we are pulling your advert, we are not using your advert again. And I instructed my team that get this advert out. And then, later they came back, no problem, you can run it. We are just saying, we are friends, we are partners. You shouldn't be running this kind of story and all that. But what I've noticed since then is that we now write our reports and they avoid interference. So if we report something that they don't like, they will just come with their own side of the story. Then we run their own side of the story. So there is a way to achieve this balance. If you are really offering value, because again, many of these people are not offering, when many of the websites are not really offering value, some people are just there to blackmail. So that is a different thing there. But if you are really offering value, I can assure you that people will see what you are doing and they will support you, and without any strings attached. Of course, I'm also aware, like Premium Times recently started a membership club. So if you join the membership, you pay certain amount, then you're entitled to some certain things. That is the way to go. That is the way to go. Let it be owned by the people. People are very happy that you are doing this. To part with 2,000 naira a month, 1,000 naira a month to support what you are doing, in exchange for, of course, the impact you are going to make on the society. It's not too much. It's not too much to ask. So I believe that people too have to see the value you are offering, and they also want to be part of. Like, this is a project we have to be part of, because these people are really giving us great. These people are really doing great journalism. So the moment they see that, then you see a lot of media houses now can begin to bank on that for their economic survival.
I'm guessing Ms. Hamid wants to add something here.
Yeah. Okay, so just to sort of add to what Simon has said, I think the world has definitely changed, and what people like myself and Simon are doing is finding a slightly different model that allows us to sort of do the sort of journalism we need to do. In this model of journalism, the ordinary public does have a role to play. We haven't seen a lot of it in Nigeria, but I reckon it's going to get better. Trust is going to be a currency that the media is going to be able to utilize to raise resources to keep doing journalism. If you're able to earn the trust of your audiences, and here, obviously, media is merging. So we have text-based, but online. We've got broadcast media, also online, but also physically. And what you're increasingly getting is you're getting converged media. So one media house creating content that is now deployed across multiple platforms. That will be the future. The advantage that is going to have is that you're going to be able to reach, I think, more people easier, but it also means that you can actually build trust with your readers. And if you build trust and they get to understand the significance of what you do, which is the subject of this particular conversation, that as a media house, you're driving social change, you're being a voice for the voiceless, you're providing truth in an era where a lot of people are up to their ears in fake news. I think that trust eventually can actually translate into naira and kobo for you that will allow you to sustain your operations. It won't be an overnight thing because, of course, trust is something that takes time to build. But eventually, I think it will bear fruition. So you have people doing multiple things so one of them is, of course, the membership, like we said, and the subscription. People believing that your journalism is so worthy, is critical to nation building, and therefore they're willing to put aside a little amount every month and to help you sustain that. I am not as optimistic as Simon around the sustainability of advertising, because even in the most developed countries, we're finding that advertising is beginning to be a quid pro quo, where people are giving you advertising in return for trying to exercise some sort of editorial control. So he's a bit of a big name, and I think because of that, he's gotten away with telling people no. But my time at Next also exposed me to the fact that the big players who sort of do the biggest advertising, and I had one of the biggest advertisers in Nigeria who had literally agreed to give us a full year of advertising on Next, called me, and I spent 2 hours on the phone with him, him threatening to pull advertising if we don't pull a story that they had managed to keep out of every other newspaper at that time, except, Next. And they found out we were about to go to town with it. And despite all my entreaties and promise to look, why don't you talk to us? Give us your side of the story so that we give a balanced view to everybody, but we can't kill it. In the end, we lost that big account. And all of these things added up to the demise of Next. I mean, there were other issues as well. I'm not suggesting it's a straightforward thing. It was a very complex thing. And one day we shall write a book about the story of Next. But, I'm saying that advertising is very flaky because it tends to be put out by people who in this society tend to have a few things they want to hide. And so my focus, and I think the focus of a few other people, including Simon, is to try and actually have multiple sources of income so that you're not 100% reliant on only one source. And that when that one source gives you problems, you have other sources that allow you to keep operating.
Thank you very much. I want to move now from economic sustainability to self-responsibility. You know, oftentimes it's so easy for the journalist who is passionate about social change to confuse journalism with activism. And I know that one of Mr. Kolawole's most famous newsroom sayings is that we are journalists, we are not activists.
By the way, I disagree, but it's okay.
Okay, and then I I personally think that it's difficult for the journalist to properly seek societal change without without operating with a tinge of activism. My
Absolutely.
conviction, but then I know that there is also the tendency for the journalist to overstep the boundaries of his profession. So I want to ask, what exactly is the fine line between activism and journalism, and at what point should that line be drawn? I'll start with Mr. Kolawole, then come to you, Mr. Ahmed. Can, can you hear me, Mr. Kolawole?
We can see him. Simon? He's muted.
Okay. Okay,
Simon,
ask
can
to
you hear
unmute.
us? Simon?
Yeah, I had a little hitch, but I'm
I
back.
thought it was that advertiser that came back, the one who killed the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry, you were talking about the line between activism and journalism?
yes. So what's that fine line between activism and journalism, and at what point should we draw it? At what point do we say this is the limit? This is crossing over to activism now, yes.
I guess Kadra is taking that.
No, I want to start from you, then I'll come to
Okay.
that.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, the journalist must make impact. Any field that you cover, you must make impact. Journalism that does not make impact, for me, is not worth being called journalism. So as a journalist, I look at the society, I don't like what I'm seeing. We have power problems, we have water shortage, we have bad roads, we have a prison system, a justice system that is warped. So I want to highlight these issues. I want to do special features, I want to do news reports, I want to do investigations to bring this to the fore. So I want to see why, I want to look at the budget and say they budgeted 10 billion naira for this road. Has the budget been released or it's been released? How come the road has not been done? So I want to raise issues like, 10 billion budgeted for Fisayo Shoyomo Road, but the road has not been done and money has been released. I want to do that report. Now, this is supposed to be some form of raw material for activists to now take up and begin their own activism with it. So I can see something like a collaboration between activists and journalists. Journalists providing the raw data, the raw material. In fact, the activists too, if they have information or have expertise in analyzing, like budget, for instance, they have expertise in analyzing budget, in analyzing data and budgets and all that. They give you, you go through, you do your story, then activists begin to campaign. Campaigners take it up. So I believe that there's a line, there's a fine line between, I don't want as a journalist to be the one out there on the streets asking somebody to resign, asking somebody to be sacked or whatever. I believe that for me, that my own school of journalism, my own line of journalism I've picked is to raise the issue, stay on the issue, and see how results can come out. And I want activists, when they see the reports, I want them to take it upon themselves, issue statements, organize protests, go and block the National Assembly or block the Ministry of Finance. So I see more for collaboration rather than me being the activist. I think Kadra has finally agreed with me now.
No, I think, look, I think part of the problem perhaps lies in our definition and understanding of what activism is. So if what Mr. Kolawole means by activism is carrying a banner and standing on the streets and protesting certain things.
Campaigners.
I can kind of understand what he's saying. But you know, if activism is about holding people in positions of authority accountable, which I think that is what I consider to be activism, then really I think the line between activism and journalism is very blurred. There is this thing that comes up when you talk about journalism, the word objectivity. And so people expect you as a journalist, they use the word that you should be objective. I think it's impossible. I think from the day you wake up and have your editorial meeting and take a decision on what stories to cover and what stories not to cover, you've already taken a side. So objectivity in that sense is impossible. What is possible in journalism is balance and good practice and ethics. These are all the things that then make sure whatever you do, your biases do not unduly influence. So if you have processes for deciding which stories you're going to do and at the point at which you're doing the stories, what the checkpoints are to make sure that you are not, allowing your biases to seep in. This is the ethics of the job that then mean that you don't move away from being a journalist that puts public interest before anything else to the person who does other things, okay? So I see myself as a journalist first and foremost, but I think some of my journalism necessarily, because of the nature of the kind of community and society we live in, will be activist politics. And what I mean by that is that I will take a decision, I will look at the story, I'll take a decision and decide, this has become so significant, I'm going to put all my resources into investigating it, and I'm going to blow it out. And when, for example, Simon takes the back page of This Day, or his column that he does for his own paper, and decides that he's going to call out the fact that we've allowed ethnic or identity politics to become such a big thing here that we're losing out. That's activism. I don't know, that maybe because he thinks he has not carried a placard and gone on the street. There are more people reading him than there are people on the streets. So I don't understand what he means by difference between activism and whatever. There are strong positions that Simon has taken, and those strong positions are designed to hold people in positions of authority accountable. That is activism. I put it to you.
Yeah, I mean, like I drive, but I'm not a driver,
Yeah, okay, sure.
So
yeah.
I can engage in some activism, but I'm not an activist.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when you talk about those lines, they are fine, but I'm saying that there are times when you have to go into that in order to be effective in your job as a journalist.
The danger comes for me where I read some reports. I was taught journalism in a particular way. There's a difference between news writing and opinion writing.
Yes.
Now, I'm told to avoid adjectives in news writing as much as possible. I'm told to avoid injecting personal opinion as much as possible, except maybe you're an expert in a particular field and you are trying to explain certain things in the story. Now, I also see that when activists go into journalism, these lines are missing. For instance, as a journalist...
What we're saying is best practice is supposed to be the panacea, that's supposed to be the solution. If you did your journalism utilizing best practice, so this is the things that you said, making sure that you're not passing opinion as fact. Making sure that when you do an opinion, there's a difference between an opinion column and a news column. If you did that well, then the chances are there will be no problems. Part of the problem we have is we have a problem of standards and we have a problem of quality. So that is essentially our problem. It's not because that there's this blurred line or people are not willing to stay. I think the problem we have, particularly in our space, and you and I know that, because we spent the last 2 years trying to see if we could put together some sort of quality control, right? Some sort of ombudsman that will regulate this bad journalism that we see. And I think that's part of the problem. Anyway, okay, sorry I interrupted. Sorry.
No, it's good because now you You know, would you rather be called an activist or a journalist or a activist
Journalist.
journalist?
No, I'm a journalist. But I think
You
that part
understand?
of my job as a journalist, there are times when by necessity, in trying to do the job of a journalist, you do get involved in some activism. So I'm not an
Yes.
activist primarily. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, that's why I say I drive, but you can't say, oh, Samuel, you're a driver. You understand? In the sense that I drive. So yeah, I'm involved in some activism. I do that in my opinion column. Even when you are staying on a story, for instance, maybe Abacha loot, you know, it's a corruption campaign, or somebody has done something that you shouldn't have done with Abacha loot, and you are highlighting this now. It's a form of activism. But what you're actually doing is journalism. Now, the activism part, there are activists whose job is also to amplify and get, we need each other. Maybe that's, we have to put that. We need each other. But some people actually see themselves as activists. As journalists, they see themselves as activists. But when you have taken a position as a journalist, it's going to be difficult. I mean, you say I'm an environmental activist, for instance, and I'm a journalist. It's going to be difficult for you to be fair and balanced in your reporting because you are saying everything as somebody polluting the environment. You understand? Oh, this is, oh, don't do this project, it's going to cause this. You are no longer reporting, to even report the benefits, because activism in a way conditions you to think in a particular way. And so if you don't think in that particular way, they say you have compromised. Because
Okay,
as an
so we need to maybe even define, because you know,
this kind of thing.
even within journalism, there's something called public service journalism, right? Which is sort of what I am trying to do. I don't know if I always succeed, but that's the tradition that I come from, because my first career in journalism was in the BBC, which was sort of set up as a public service broadcaster, right? I mean, they have their issues. I'm not saying they're perfect, but that is really where I cut my teeth in journalism. And so if the starting point for everything that you do as a journalist is it for the, what is it for the public good? Answer the question about the public good. Then I think it's very difficult for you to go wrong, you know? I mean, for example, we have journalists that specialize in the environment, for example. So there are journalists who call themselves, because that's their beat, that's all they cover. But you understand, that doesn't mean that in covering that beat, they can't bring, again, best practice to their coverage of the story. But every single story they do is likely to be about environment, impact on people, da, 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 da. But if you are working within a newsroom in which best practice has been enshrined, and there are processes to follow that ensure that your own biases are not spilling into your coverage, etc., etc. And I know it sounds idealistic and it's never perfect. There are always issues, but we must try, is what I'm saying. And so depending on the kind of journalism you do, I like to think that all my journalism, whether I'm covering politics or the environment, or whether I'm talking about the National Assembly, the starting point for me is impact on the public, you know, public good. That is my starting point. What does it mean for the public? That is the first thing I always ask. And so I find that distinction really quite difficult. And I think it's becoming increasingly difficult, partly also because the world is changing and is shifting. And governments themselves are becoming problematic. Agencies that traditionally should protect the public are becoming problematic. So here I'm talking about maybe the police. If you look at places in America where they're trying to defund their police force. I mean, today I woke up to the story of a policeman somewhere in the Southeast who basically abducted a 35-year-old on the pretense that she wasn't wearing a mask, and he was trying to enforce that, and raped her continuously. So, you know, it's when you're going to hold institutions that in the past were credible perhaps, or had some degree of credibility, and who were part of societal law and order, and now they've become part of the fabric themselves. It's difficult to do it if you do not have a passion for some sort of activism. There has to be some degree of, there has to be a fire in you to keep it going, particularly because it tends to be dangerous work as well. You know, this is work that you get called names from all sides. You know, everybody abuses you. Those that can harm you will try to harm you. And so there's a degree of fire that is required. That fire might be, in my view, is the activism that says you keep going. And I think Fisayo probably understands this a little bit more than me, and maybe even Simon.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. But so let me say that we've crossed the halfway mark. We started at 5:32, and I would really like us to end at 6:32. This is going to be a 1-hour engagement, although it's getting more and more interesting. The audience will have the opportunity to ask their questions. If you have questions, someone has already sent a question, but you're free to send. We'll select like 3 or 4 and let our guests answer. I'm going to ask 2 or 3 more questions, and then we move to the audience. And I'll ask 2 at the same time, because even though they are quite related, I would really like to separate them. So Ms. Ahmed spoke about standards, and that was meant to be my closing question. You know, what exactly do we need to do to solve the standards problem in Nigerian journalism? I have an idea what I think has to be done, but of course I'd like to hear from senior figures like you. I really want to see if there are solutions, and if they exist, and if it's possible to follow them through standards. But before then, I want to ask Ms. Ahmed, you started your career at the BBC. You've worked internationally, from South Africa, in the south of Africa, to Eritrea in the east. You've worked on programs that set the agenda. You've seen how things are done in other climes, and you know, in the interest of learning from where things are being done separately, not necessarily where things are being better done, but where things are being done differently. What can we learn from how journalism is done internationally to help us drive social change?
So
are there things we can adopt? Yes.
Yeah, it's really important to say, despite the fact that I think this will show up my age, that I started journalism over 25 years ago, right?
Okay. 25 plus X is equal to...
In other words, what I'm trying to say is that it was a totally different world when I started.
Okay.
There was a degree of sanity. I think the world has gone mad right now. You know, everything's on its head, everything has turned upside down. I started journalism, I think, at a time where, even in those climes, there was a certain honor and integrity associated with the profession. People thought of our job as important and significant, and people thought we had a role to play in nation building. And it's not that that has changed, we still have a role to play, but we've lost the confidence of a lot of people. Journalists generally were viewed with a little bit more suspicion. We used to have a very high standing. Our credibility was high. If you said you were a journalist, people respected you, people looked up to you. Now, operating under those kind of circumstances to operating today, where you are battling to do the job, but also battling to isolate yourself from purveyors of fake news, for example. So when I started, there was nothing called fake. You know what I mean? There was no fake news. People did not sit down and deliberately manufacture information. So again, the credibility issue didn't come up. The BBC is perhaps one of the biggest broadcasting schools in the world. That's how I see it. The reason is that it's such a huge organization that you can literally learn how to do everything under the roof of the BBC. So you can do radio, you can do TV, you can do text, because they also print magazines, you know. And they had a practice when I was there, I don't know whether it has changed now, that they called attachments. So essentially you get employed by a section of the BBC and you sit there and you work for a bit. But you have an opportunity to compete for internal opportunities to work in other sections of the BBC. And there were particular sections that were considered, if you like, the cream of the BBC. So getting to work there was considered a big deal. And what did they do is they opened it up. It was competitive. You actually wrote exams and you were interviewed internally to be able to go and work in those places. And what it did is that when I left the BBC, I had done a lot of radio. I'd spent a bit of time in the main newsroom of the BBC writing just news bulletins because I wanted to improve. My writing was very bad. And so when the opportunity came up to sort of compete for an opportunity to go into the newsroom and spend 6 months there, I did. I got lucky, I got in. And all I did for 6 months was write, news bulletins for other people to read. I then moved in to a little bit of TV behind the scenes doing production work. So what that does for you is that it does give you versatility. It allows you to be able to sort of move from place to place. But they also spent a lot of money on training. They had their own training school and they brought in people as well. And I think that is the sort of grounding. And the BBC has its issues. It is empire. It is funded, the World Service, for example. So the BBC is divided into two. Domestic BBC is funded by a license fee, which means essentially the British public own domestic BBC because they fund them. BBC World Service is funded by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. They understand the importance of soft power. So they put a huge budget behind funding, BBC internationally. It does mean the dynamics are slightly different. And of course they have agendas, but they're very sophisticated. They're very subtle. And so you sometimes are not quite clear when you first start out as a rookie about the agenda, and you're quite excited, you're in there and you're enjoying it. But the beauty about having an education of that sort that teaches you to question is that eventually you start to question even those who ask you to ask questions, right? And that's what the BBC, I think, did for me. We don't have anything like that here. I believe in standards. I think they are the things that allow us to separate ourselves from bloggers and to separate ourselves from fake news. And they are the things that eventually are going to allow the good media houses to rise above the shaft. You know what they say, And because you have to, currency, again, I go back to trust. Trust is going to be a currency that people will utilize. I've seen you utilize the trust you've earned from people, Fisayo. Throughout this COVID period, you became the person that people reached out to when they couldn't get stories out. Why? They trusted you. And so this is the thing with standards and doing things properly. Simon and I have been part of a group that have been trying to see if we could persuade the rest of the industry to get an ombudsman. The ombudsman to sort of be able to take complaints from the public, to be able to agree certain standards, so that, there is like a uniform thing. It hasn't been easy. We've been on it, I think now getting to 2 or 3 years, but we're not ready to give up because we actually think the industry needs it, particularly because we've got this deluge of everybody trying to practice journalism. Those who trained, those who didn't, those who are real journalists, those who are bloggers, and there's nothing wrong with blogging. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with this. Some amazing bloggers. But I'm saying as an industry, if we want to earn the trust we've lost from the public, if we want to continue to be able to be given the respect we used to enjoy and be able to do our job properly, then we have to take responsibility for the quality of our work. And taking responsibility for the quality of our work means to some extent some sort of self-regulation. You can't be regulated by government. No, that's is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kolawole.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, talking about standards.
Yes.
Yes, there are the issue about ethics. Some people don't even understand that journalism has ethics. Maybe they know, but they thought those things are just classroom theories. I've had to argue with journalists who say they are consulting for one company or the other and all that. As journalists, not if you are a businessman, I can understand. You own a newspaper, you own a telecoms company, you own a bank. But if your full-time job is journalism and you say you are, some cannot see, they don't even understand that conflict. That is one. Another area of standard that has serious problem is the quality of reporting. A lot of libelous stories. People don't understand what libel is about. Even Nigeria is a country where the courts are very active on libel. Many journalists and newspaper houses will have been heavily indebted because we don't even understand what constitutes libel. Conflict reporting is a major area that the standards are also low. Now, I want to say something which may sound a bit controversial, but that is my conviction. When somebody goes to a village in Katsina State, some group of people go to a village in Katsina State and kill husband, kill wife, when we are going to report it, oh, bandits kill 15 in Katsina. Oh, bandits kill 50 in Zamfara. Now, let the same bandits cross to Ore, attack a car and kill somebody. They become Fulani jihadists. Fulani herdsmen attack Ore. Now, it could be herdsmen that are also attacking in Zamfara or attacking somewhere in Jigawa. So how to report conflicts? Our standards are low. There's something going on in Kaduna now, Kaduna South, killings. Now, if you read Nigerian papers, you will think the killing is one-sided, but the killings are on both sides. So our language of reporting, even the facts that we push out, tend to support one group above the other. So these are also standards that have dropped. We also talk about the quality of writing. You read some stories, the number of words in one paragraph, punctuation, grammar. Not many Nigerian newspapers can boast of high quality. I'm not even talking of typographical errors, which is also a problem, but I'm even talking of simple is and was. Some people don't know their is and was, and they're journalists. Some people rise to the highest level in their profession. Now, what am I saying? How are we going to address this? That's also what I think, because in Nigeria, it's not in our culture. I have seen it over the years. Every newspaper has a printing press.
Simon, we lost you for a bit. You have to recap what you were saying.
Okay. I was saying something about the standards. I spoke about ethics. I also talk about the quality of reporting and the quality of writing.
We got this.
I spoke. I hope you're hearing me now.
Okay.
I spoke about.
We can hear you.
The way language you use tend to support certain prejudices and biases. That if a group of bandits, me again.
Yeah. No, you're back. We can
when
hear you.
When we are reporting, we will say bandits. Okay. So if the same people come to operate somewhere between the north and the south on the boundary, we call them Fulani herdsmen. So that even the language you use in reporting is also a problem. But as Kedra has said, what we are going to resolve eventually is self-regulation. I believe that individual media houses will have to deal with these issues in terms of trainings and enforcing the standards. It's the individual media houses that will have to enforce. As the industry will also have to do something, but I can't see that for us to be able to address these issues. Wow.
We lost you again, but we don't know if you are back.
Yeah.
Can you kill video?
Yes.
So while you're at least talking, so we can hear you? Maybe if you kill video, the audio will improve.
Okay.
Okay, but
yes.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
So what did you hear me? What did you hear me say in recent times?
Individual media houses will have to deal with these issues.
Yes, there is a problem of lack of collaboration and cooperation in the Nigerian media. It's a serious problem. Kadra and I and a few other people were talking about how we can get an ombudsman. But from our own experience, the Nigerian media were working in silos. So getting us to collaborate is a very difficult thing. We think more as competitors rather than collaborators. Whereas we face common threats, existential threats. So instead of us to come together and attack this common enemy in terms of standards, ethics, quality of writing, quality of reporting, we are seeing ourselves as competitions. For now, I believe that each individual media houses will have to start enforcing these standards until we're able to reach a kind of agreement globally on enforcing standards. But it is not something government should do. I agree completely with Kedra. It is not something that government should do because government, they have their own motive. Anytime they say they are trying to help you, they have something else in mind.
Is there something you want to add, Madam, before we? Okay, yeah. So we will move now to questions from the audience shortly. But I really do think that in addition to training, to having an independent ombudsman, to all these things, I really do think that at some point, newspaper owners will have to sit down and talk about pay. Really important. I teach an online journalism class in UI, the final year class, and I've come to discover that the majority of the class, you find that they want to go into advertising and PR. They don't want to come to journalism because the problem of poor pay has filtered down to the point where they know that, oh, journalists, the pay is really terrible. I don't want to do envelopes. When I interned at the Guardian in 2004, my then editor, Mr. Jaman Nikolako, who identified someone as the best intern in our set. His name is Abimbola Ojenike. He's a lawyer. But Ojenike said he couldn't do journalism because he couldn't deal with the pay and he couldn't deal with envelopes, and he left. So the finest brains in communication and language arts and arts-related courses, they don't want to come to journalism, and we have to find a way to address that. If we can't tap from the best in the talent pool, it's going to be difficult because even if we train, people need to be able to assimilate training. They have to be willing, they have to be diligent. There's a certain level of intellectual expectation to have of a trainee. And if they don't have that, then it's really tough. I hope that's a conversation for another day, but I just wanted to chip that in. A couple of questions that I will just try to take two of them. Someone is saying, Oluyemisi Wada is asking, Mr. Kolawole, what are your thoughts on the fact that a democratic Nigeria is being led by a constitution drafted by a military? Okay. So this is not really about journalism and social change. So I won't go into that. So someone asks, Morakin Yogbola, these days, we know journalists who are critical against fellow journalists. What part of activism comes to play? What can be done about this? Open to either of you wants to answer. Journalists who are critical of fellow journalists, what part of activism is that?
I see the floor.
Yes, please, you have it.
Okay, so I mean, look, I think it's all about how it is done. It's in principle, I don't have a problem with us holding each other accountable. We cannot be saying that our job is to hold others accountable and then say we cannot be held accountable. Do you know what I mean? It's hypocrisy that you spend your whole career saying you're doing wrong, you're doing bad, you're exposing corruption, and then when we do something, we're saying people shouldn't hold us accountable. I think it is perfectly fine to be held accountable, and if it is done by other journalists, that is also fine. I think what people are referring to, though, what I suspect the person is referring to is this canceling culture, or where you sort of go online and you sort of attack people. I think that's a slightly different thing. I'm at a stage in my life that I believe in constructive criticism. So if you really care about the profession and you're a journalist and you see other journalists doing things wrong, there's a way you can call them out that then enhances the profession, enhances their job, and also enhances you as a human being. You know what I mean? It's just that sort of thing. Now, obviously, if people don't take that and they can drag it, and then it's a different issue. But I fundamentally, I don't see a problem with telling people that they've erred, especially people who spend their whole career telling other people that they've erred. Accountability cannot be negotiated. We must be able to hold everybody accountable equally.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I agree with you, but personally, you know, I just have this esprit de corps in me, which will not be acceptable to people.
No, but are you saying you will do it differently, quietly? I'm sure you do quietly, Simon.
Yeah, I can do it quietly.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's about the approach, but the principle of it should not be a problem.
No, the principle is I don't have any problem with it.
I think it's the approach. It's even like, look, you're not just journalism. In our personal, it's a bit like you having a friend and the person does something, and what you choose to do instead of talking to the friend quietly is to wait until you're at a family party or something, and then you decide to call that person out. It's not good relations, you know. It's very bad. But I'm just saying nobody should be above correction. Is what I'm saying.
Sure. For me, I'm very open to criticism. I'm very open. I mean, every minute, every second, I'm getting messages. This shouldn't be like this. I'm very open to it. But if you go on Twitter to be abusing me, I don't think I'll be excited about that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a hypothesis. The cable runs a story about A, which we know is true, and then the same cable publishes a story written by someone that rubbishes the facts said in A. Why does this exist in the sector? So I think the cable is just a filler here. Why does it exist that a paper publishes a story, and then there is a rejoinder from someone else that seems to rubbish the facts in the story? Why does the same paper run it?
I think it's just about fair hearing, you know. So that's what I'm saying about activism. You understand? If you are doing activism, you don't want to listen to the other side. But if you have done your story, you have reported it, and the other side say, no, you are not right, you still publish it. But you know what you do at the end of the day is to say, we stand by our story. That is in order. But it's just fair that what we call right of reply or rejoin. It's just fair to listen to, let people also state their own facts. I think it's a fair thing.
Okay.
And I think you find from experience, you know, best practice in journalism when you're doing a story is from the beginning to try and hear from both sides. Nigerians can be very clever people. So sometimes you will chase someone down. You will tell them, look, I'm doing a story about A. I've got A, B, and C, and I need you to hear from you so that I take out a balanced story. And they will give you the runaround. And then when the story has gone out, they now start frantically trying to reach you. Maybe because the impact of the story has been bigger than they thought it would be. And then but you know, we deserve what is called fair hearing, you know, a right of reply in the media is a tradition. And I think by and large, I don't see a problem with allowing people that opportunity. Because if the facts of your story are the facts of your story, often that doesn't make much of a difference to the public perception. So actually, when I advise people who sort of know that I have a bit of experience in strategic comms, friends who sort of have issues and they come to me and they say to me, oh, this is going on, I always tell them that being the first to take out your story has some advantages. It's just the way humans are made. We tend to believe what we hear first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, but I think to sum it up, it's best practice to publish rejoinders. If it's going to become a court case, it's part of what, if they send a rejoinder you don't use, they can prove malice. They can prove malice in court and say it was malice that you didn't even hear them out, you didn't even allow them to state their own side of the story.
Okay, one more question. Ms. Ahmed, recently you started a radio station. What would you say is the role of radio as a media platform? Hasn't this dwindled over the years?
Right. Okay. So I'm starting a radio station that is slightly different in the sense that we're not doing music, we're not doing entertainment. I'm starting essentially the equivalent of what you might call an NPR or a BBC. So a radio station based again on the public good, public right to know. So it's going to be broadcast journalism. It's one of the reasons I'm having issues recruiting, because everybody I come across is an on-air personality. There are very few proper broadcast journalists in Nigeria. But the idea is to be able to allow conversations that are required in this country, but which we've been really shy of having. We want to be able to have vigorous, in-depth conversation, but regulated in line with best practices of journalism. So it's not Twitter, you know what I mean? It's not, it's not unbridled abuse. It's not facts that have not been, opinion that hasn't been verified. It's informed conversation. And we think radio, I know it sounds a bit weird, but 7 million people listen to radio in Lagos, partly because a lot of people are always stuck in traffic, a large chunk of their day. So radio still remains a very viable medium in many parts of Nigeria, because we're not as developed as other places. And so the access to information still remains through radio, but we're also going to be online. So we are targeting diaspora audiences as well. We just don't think that the Nigerian media space is, people kind of seem to think it's not that developed really. There's 200 million people. There's room for many media houses. If we can just get our act together and build a functional society that can support the media ecosystem. Part of the reason why media houses are struggling is what Simon said in his first response to what we're doing. We've become a poor country. And so the base to support the media is not there. So as the country gets better, becomes better, you find that media houses will also do better. It's one of those catch-22 situations, because we then have the job of helping to make the country better. But we first have to survive to do it, right? So we keep trying.
Okay, one more question. With the explosion of citizen journalism, is the role of seasoned journalists like you watered down? With the explosion of citizen journalism, is the role of seasoned journalists like you watered down?
Yeah, should I take that?
Yes, please.
Look, I don't even believe in this thing called citizen journalism. So I'll give you an example. There was a time the dump in Lagos, at the Olusosun in Lagos, people saw something like fire and smoke everywhere. And then citizen journalists went on the internet and said, oh, how can Lagos State government set fire to this thing in the afternoon? And look at what is happening. Meanwhile, what has just happened was it's a natural phenomenon. Nobody put fire to anything. It's just the waste, the methane. Like physics that just led to this. So now I trained as a journalist. I would rather talk to experts. I will call Lagos State government before I write such a thing. I say, what is happening at Olusosun? So, but you say you're a citizen journalist, you just see something, you don't even understand what happened. You just saw fire, and then you have concluded it's fire. So I have problem with what is called citizen journalism. I think it's like the venereal disease on journalism.
And I think, if I could just add quickly, I think people do not understand that when they say journalism, you're actually talking about a process and standards and that kind of thing. It's just taking something and giving it to the public doesn't make it journalism. Okay? So you can be a citizen informant. I don't know whether that's the name to give the person.
Maybe that is what they mean.
But journalism, journalism is a set of work practices and work ethics in the collection and dissemination of information. If you do not do the things that you're supposed to do that entail journalism, before disseminating the information, we can't call you a journalist. You are not.
I mean, let's say somebody collapses beside me and I know how to do CPR and I revive him. Does that make me a citizen doctor? That's how I calling myself a doctor.
So the person who revived the acting NDC chairman at the National Assembly.
That's a citizen. Off the mic. It's okay. It's okay.
That was not him reviving anybody. He threatened him, and the guy decided he better wake.
Off the mic. It's okay. It's okay. Off the mic. It's okay. It's okay. Off the mic. It's okay.
So it happens that, ironically, this is the point where we start to think about offing the mic. You know, it's been a very interesting conversation. In case you are just joining us, I think one person just joined because I've been keeping tabs on the list of attendees. We've been speaking with Mr. Simon Kolawole, former editor of This Day newspaper, Chevening scholar, media entrepreneur, CEO of the Cable newspaper, as well as Ms. Kadaria Ahmed, former BBC journalist, former editor of Next newspaper, founder of Daria Media. Thank you so much for joining us. By the way, Ms. Ahmed is used to sitting on my side of the table rather than the other side. In 2011, she moderated a presidential election debate. She did the same in 2019. And
I should do the same again in 2023.
And I fondly
rest. I have to rest. We have to bring up the younger ones now.
You will rest until 2023.
I fondly remember a scene from 2019 where she was questioning the president who was recontesting, and the vice president was seated by him, and the vice president was answering, and she said, "You can speak for yourself. You can speak for yourself." So I'm happy that no one is speaking for you. I haven't had cause to say you can speak for yourself. Thank you for not putting me through, for not burdening me with that. Thanks again. We've taken 1 hour, 42 minutes of your time. We know how busy you two are. Thank you so much. Thank you to Enough is Enough Nigeria, the host, let me say the chief host. You know, in Nigeria, we love titles. So yeah, if we have guests, we should then have the chief host in keeping in line with the tradition. Thank you also to those who have joined us. I hope you learned something. At least I learned 1 or 2 things. And I hope last Thursday in the month of September, I hope you are going to join EIE Nigeria in another edition of Thursday Talks. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
And Fisayo, just quickly, thank you so much for keeping the flag flying. It gives us hope when we see someone like you doing journalism, the sort of journalism that you do. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank
I also want to add my own thank you to it. And thank you for what you are doing on Twitter. Highly appreciated. And I think you are doing something that will take you to another level. I'm expecting you to take it to another level soon.
Like so, next level?
Next level. Serious next level, not
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
everyone. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. That was nice. Thank you.